Welcome. If you don't know, I am Beluga the Jaegerist, and this is your first introduction to the channel. Welcome to the channel. Welcome. I am probably just going to be doing exclusively Attack on Titan content because that is the content I am most familiar with. So that's probably the only content I'm going to be doing here. So if you love everything Attack on Titan, this is the place to go to. I'm extremely knowledgeable about it. So will be a ton of videos, ton of good in-depth videos. So yes, let's get into it. So as you can tell from the thumbnail and title, this video is going to be about the villain. And again, all my videos contain spoilers because here's the thing about Attack on Titan. The story changes so much depending on where you are in the show that things become wildly outdated depending on what season or chapter you're on. So I've actually, I used to be on Korra. And was someone watching this? Hey, why did you leave? Bro, why would you leave this, man? Come on. Anyway, um, so I used to um answer a bunch of questions about Attack on Titan on Korra. But then I kept getting requests that were extremely outdated, and I was like, you know what? You're gonna have to just watch the rest of the show because this question makes no sense in the final context. So all my stuff is gonna be up to date and very knowledgeable, in depth. So that's why all my videos will probably contain 139 spoilers. So this, as well as everything else, will contain 139 spoilers. So if you don't want to spoil yourself, and in fact, I implore you, if you have not read 139, even if you read 138, even if you read 3 pages of 139, I implore you, please leave this video. Do not spoil yourself. This is probably um in some way a once in a lifetime opportunity. You have a once in a lifetime opportunity here, and I suggest that you do not squander it by watching a YouTube video that spoils everything. Practice self control. There's millions and millions of videos on YouTube. Go watch something else. Okay? Go watch something else. Don't watch my video. Please. By the way, so one of the greatest things about Isayama is that I actually forgot what I was gonna say. Funny enough. Anyway, but actually no, I remember what I was gonna say. One of the greatest things about Isayama is when he writes his story, he makes it so nuanced that there is no really good guy or bad guy. It's incredible. Now, from when you first watch it, it's very obvious, right? The Titans are bad guys. They're evil. They eat people. They kill people. They take away people's freedoms. And on top of that, they don't even need to eat people to live. So there's no reason for them to eat people in the first place. It's not like this strange, vegetarian thing where it's like, oh well, maybe they need to eat humans to live in. And actually, no, it's not vegetarian. It's actually the Demon Slayer. The Demon Slayer plot. Spoilers, Promise Neverland. It's actually the Promise Neverland plot. Like, oh, they need to eat humans to get their intellect or something like that. It's not even like a moral dilemma like that. Like, they don't even need to eat humans, and when they to survive, and when they do eat humans, they just throw them back up again. So they're completely evil, right? And then the warrior shows up. Annie shows up, and she's completely evil, right? But then you see her crying in the woods, and then you see her this flashback with her dad towards the end of the show. So you still hate her guts. And then Reiner betrays you, and he has this very cryptic speech about becoming a half warrior, not seeing the mission through. And then you see him struggle with have two personalities, and then you see Berthold make this emotionally charged speech about how they couldn't come to terms with their sins. That's kind of weird. But it gets more and more complex, and then you realize, wait a second, Titans are actually just humans. And it goes all up to this point, which is an incredible line, which is actually where the anime is right now, as of May 21st, 2022, which is where he says, which is actually the last thing that says in the anime this far, which is when he says, well, in my translation, it says, I'll destroy every last one of those animals that are on this earth. Now, he said that in the first few chapters, referring, of course, to the Titans. But then it became apparent that he was actually fighting humans instead this entire time. Humans were the real evil ones. So he says animals, referring, or actually maybe your translation says monsters, which is maybe more appropriate. Better on this earth, not referring to Titans because they're not the evil ones. It's actually humans that are the evil ones. Titans are just a pawn in their little game, right? Um, so it's like the saying, guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? So again, this is not a political video. I'm just saying it's the same sort of. Who the hell is up at this time of night? Someone has a late shift. Anyway. Okay. No, he's gone. Let's continue. So then we go with so that's the Titans chronologically, from being completely evil monsters who don't need to eat people to being where Eren feels compassionate for them. Season 3, he feels bad for Titans, believe it or not. Again, if I said, "Hey guys, Eren feels bad for Titans," you'd be like, "What are you talking about, Beluga? What? He feels bad for Titans? What?" But he does at the end of season 3, and then of course, he drops his vengeful desires for Reiner and Barathol. Well, Reiner, because he's the only one around at that point. And then with the Warriors, we go from strange reason. I know after the whole situation, you guys really didn't like her. Y'all don't know what you're doing. Anyway, but then there's Reiner, right? Reiner's the guy we all hate. We hated his guts. Then we go on. Oh, he's actually we actually sympathize with him more. We think he's a well-written character, right? Gabby, which again, you idiots also hated Gabby. Here's the thing: I also want Gabby to get thrown out of the airship. I just want Falco to go with her. That's the difference between you and me. I want her to get thrown on the airship. I just want Falco to go with her. And the only reason why I hated Gabby is because she was opposing Eren. It's the only reason why I hated Gabby. The reason why I don't like Aaron Rodgers because he opposes Russell Wilson. Well, he's not in the NFC anymore. Anyway, you know what I mean. I didn't like her just like the same way I don't like Tom Brady. He beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, not because I don't like his morals or whatever. That's ridiculous. But anyway, so he hated Gabby, and then you're like, oh, Gabby's actually a good role in character. Look, she hasn't developed me. Zeke, same thing. Like, oh, man, I hate this guy. Takes so much pleasure in killing people. Blah blah blah. And then you realize, oh, actually, he thinks that death is relief for Elvians. So that's why. That's why he's doing that. So now I feel for Zeke. Now I sympathize with Zeke. All right. So that I'm basically explaining how all the villains actually became sympathetic and understandable figures, down from the Titans to the Warriors and everyone else. But that being said, there is I wouldn't say a bad guy, but there's a villain. Now, there's a difference between a villain and antagonist. I'm sure you guys all know this. Eren's the best. Right, Eren's like the villain, antagonist, protagonist, anti-hero. He's all those things. But and I'm sure you guys all know the nuances between villain and anti-hero and protagonist and antagonist. Now, when I say villain, I'm going to say people whose actions either led to the majority of the negative things happening in the story, or people whose negative actions were not justified, but were not reasonable. For example, Gabby's actions were not justifiable, but they were reasonable. They were reasonable, right? Someone like Eren or Annie or Barathol. The hell is going on up there? Those people's actions are both justified and reasonable. And if you disagree, you can put your little 2 cents in if you want to. But anyway, so we're going to continue with this. So who do I think the real enemy is? Well, there's actually 3 people. Hope I got this right. Yeah, there's 3 people. Now, as far as the person who's responsible for the most human suffering, the person who's responsible for the most tragedy, who had the most power, the person who everyone was striving against since Eren was around, is, I'm sure you'll guess it by now, Ymir Fritz. Yes, Ymir Fritz. Wow. Again, that's what I'm saying. There's really no bad guy because again, you're probably all gasping and pearl clutching right now that I called Ymir Fritz a villain. But fact of the matter is, she's had the power for 2,000 years to not participate in this war, but she does. She perpetuates this war for 2,000 years, and she actively creates titans that she knows is going to be used to kill other people. So every village that was raised, she did that. Either actually personally, she probably did that, and then in the afterlife, she did that. Every person who was killed by Titan, she did that. She built their Titan form, right? She built the Armor Titan's armor. She built everything. She built the Colossal Titan's, nuke, and she built his body in the first place, right? So she's been the person that everyone's been striving against, especially Eren. And the second that Eren realizes he's not free, he realizes he's not free because of Ymir's actions. Ymir built the walls. Ymir made the Titans, and then Ymir put the vow to renounce war, which made it so that the Titans wouldn't be stopped when they came to eat his mom. Right, so she's actually unequivocally the villain there, but more antagonist, right? Because she's just bringing about negative events in the story, and she's actually has again. We all feel bad for her, except for someone I know. What's his name? Dopest show. If you're watching this, talking about you. But anyway, so yeah. So again, most of us feel bad for her. Some of us don't feel bad for her. And again, I can see why. She caused an incredible amount of human suffering for 2,000 years. So I can see why some of you don't have a soft spot in heart for her, but if you do, you do. Now let's go on to the next person, who I think is a total piece of garbage. And again, his actions don't have to be justifiable, just reasonable. Again, Gabby's actions were completely unjustifiable, but I wouldn't punish her for any of it because it was reasonable, and she really had not no other choice, but she really had no other outcome from the situation she was given. Right? What else did you expect her to do in that situation? Well, of course, she was going to be a racist murderer. Of course. What else would happen? Again, you have to ask yourself. You have to say, if I was in that situation, would I do that? For example, if you would punish a burglar, you'd say, well, if I wanted an Xbox, I wouldn't break into someone's house, which is a reasonable thing to say. Only destructive members of society break into people's houses, right? Again, this is not, of course, including those of extreme hunger or poverty. Obviously, we all know those tales, and obviously, we all make an exception for it. It's a very popular cliche, but I'm talking about a person who, that's why I mentioned Xbox. Only an incredibly corrupt person would do such a thing. So you would say, well, I wouldn't see myself doing that. Same thing for rapists. You wouldn't. You can say, we might get demonetized now, but anyway, you wouldn't say, well, I'm attracted to that woman, but I wouldn't rape her. Obviously not. So I'm able to punish the rapist, right? Gabby, there's like three people in who have watched the show who have not been like Gabby. So Gabby's actions are not justifiable because they're wrong, but they're extremely reasonable, and she should be given a long leash, right? But now we move on to this man, who is the 145th king. Now, controversial opinion time. I actually prefer the original King Fritz over the 145th King Fritz. Now, you may be screaming at your device right now and saying, Beluga, what is wrong with you? How dare you like this pedophile, torturer, awful king? What is wrong with you? Now, I didn't say I liked him. Did not say I liked him. I said I prefer him over 145. And here's why. Because, see, this guy, 140, the first one, Carl, the OG, he didn't really do anything out of the ordinary. And his human suffering was going to be very limited. He cut out her tongue. He kidnapped people in slavery. He married her. Was possibly a pedophile. All really awful stuff. But again, nothing out of the ordinary, and nothing that would cause as much human suffering as what you're about to see. And the 145th king is the person who embroils the most hate for me. This guy is an absolute lunatic. He thought of he this it is almost as if he sat down on his couch and he said, "What is the plan I can use to screw over everyone?" He thought for days and he's like, "You know what? I had the perfect plan to make sure that everyone suffers. Everyone." Now here it is. Now I'm not putting just if you guys are thinking of throwing the Tyler family, I'm actually not putting the Tyler family on the line. I'm actually not putting the Tyler family because you see the Tyler family. I have a moral uh hierarchy, right? So it's God first, obviously. Then your family, usually your wife, if you're gonna get really technical, but it gets really complicated because then you have your youngest daughter, and then you have your wife, and your son. So it gets really complicated. But I would say your family slash wife, right? Because you're just gonna be with her longer. Again, for all intents and purposes, we're just gonna say family, right? So God, family, right? Then country, then man, right? So for the Tyler family to betray their countrymen, whoopsie. For the Tyler family to betray their countrymen for their family security, not only do I see as reasonable and justifiable, I almost see that as noble because again, a man's job is to secure the safety and prosperity of his family. So for the type of family to secure for generations down the line, security and wealth for their family, selling their countrymen seems to be a reasonable price to pay. Not almost as if it's not even a price, almost as if it's just a natural order of things. So I'm not actually going to blame the Tiber family for this because again, they're put in a bad situation by 145, uh, which I'll explain now. And while the 145 did have good intentions, sort of, I'm actually going to go into why he actually did not have as much good intentions as you think. Maybe saying, well, Beluga, he gave Helios credit for his surrender. Yes, but I'm going to get into this actually right now. So, 145. What he does, he looks at the Eldians and he's like, "Man, this sucks. We burn down villages, we rape people, we ethnically cleanse people. This is not good." But then he's like, "Okay, we gotta fix this, right? On the right track so far, looking good. He's trying to be a good person." So then he decides, you know what? All the Eldians should suffer for this. Yep, that's it. All those are gonna suffer. This is a war. Was war breaking out right now? I'm actually gonna take my people. I'm gonna leave to the walls. I'm gonna leave to an island, the island of Parody, and I'm just going to erect these walls, and I'm gonna threaten everyone. I'm gonna threaten the entire world and say, if you come over here, I am going to unleash. I'm going to unleash these titans and kill everybody. But in reality, he's like, well, they actually do come in and they kill people. I'm not going to turn a blind eye. This is what we get for all the things we did. Now, why do I have a problem with this? Here's the thing. Number one, Marley. No, not number one. No, number one is he's the king of Eldia. His first priority should be to secure Eldia, to make Eldia safe and happy. He's a king. So if there was a war breaking out, the Great Titan War, he should have either been fighting for LD or he should have been suing for peace. That's what he should be doing. He should be suing for peace and other under conditions that are favorable for his country. That's what any leader worth their salt would be doing. Right? A leader does not go out there and sabotage his own country. That's absurd. You'd only expect a spy to do that, but actually, it's the king doing that. But anyway, but then he threatens the Marleyans because then he basically imagine you got 4,000 Stratofortress bombers armed with nuclear weapons above you, above your country, and the some crazy guy like maybe Putin, Kim Jong Un, Xi Jinping, whatever you guys want to put in your mind, whatever makes you sweat at night and just absolutely is horrified, or maybe for some of my foreign viewers, maybe it's Donald Trump, the crazy orange man from the states. Whatever puts the fear of God into you, think about that person. Think if they had a bunch of Stratos forces or whatever bombers you guys have, or maybe they had ICBMs that are aimed at you. But again, it's more of a I'm trying to get more of a visual thing going on. And they're circling your skies, and they have these nuclear bomb. You know they have nuclear weapons in there. And the guy says, "Yeah, I'm gonna drop all these bombs if you guys come touch me." That is putting again and again we know that they were living under immense fear and dread because again dread they were living under dread because they said science has told Tiger family said science has told us that up until this point we are clueless as to why we're still alive. So imagine, right? You just something bad. You come home. Your mom says, "Wait till your father comes home." You guys have all heard that, right? Imagine you know your father is on, or maybe you don't know, but your father's taking a long time to come back home. It's taking a long ass time for him to come home. And that entire time, you're just dreading when he's going to come back home. That is basically what happened to the Marlians. They had no idea. They had no clue. They were like, it's by pure chance that we're even still breathing today. So again, that's why it screwed over the Marlians. Now for the Eldians, he took some Eldians, and of course he left others behind. He left others behind to suffer immensely under the persecution of the Marlians. Which, I mean, sort of makes sense, sort of doesn't make sense. Again, it's sort of reasonable because, again, they did do awful things. I mean, they really did. And for all those who were cheering that the guy, what is the name? I think his actual name is Mario. You know, the chubby fellow who was eaten by the Titan, the one that was bragging about killing Fea. Perhaps an Eldian did something, and they were cheering for an Eldian being killed because something like that happened to their family. It's very possible, or maybe it happened generations prior. But again, those wounds are still fresh in a sense. So so that is why the Marlians are sort of justifiable, but not as egregiously unjustifiable as King Fritz's actions. I'm not even done with King Fritz. So now we established that he struck the fear of God into the Marlians, the common Marlian. The government, the brass knew, and the warriors knew that it was a ruse. But the regular Marlian, again, was told by their top scientists that they had no clue why they were still alive that very day. Then in the Eldians. This man brings his select few to this island, again imprisoning them on this island. That's fail number 2, 3, 4. He imprisons Eldian on this island, and then he erases their memories, so they have no reason, they have no context for why they're even on the island to begin with. Again, it's one thing to do something as egregious and horrible as that, but it's another thing to erase their memory so that they have no idea why they're going to be being punished in the first place. They have no clue what is going on. And then, which precipitates the persecution of the Ackermans, because the Ackermans can't get their memory manipulated. So they remember. So they have to get persecuted by the MPs. Which again, actually, that's a great next video idea is the MPs. I'm gonna have to script that one too, but that's a good video idea. Which again, the interior MPs were really not evil. They were not really bad. I didn't really consider them bad. The first squad or the interior squad, they were actually doing, and again, Airman also said this, they were keeping the peace. Humanity was surviving. They were keeping the peace and things were going along relatively smoothly. So I don't really blame the interior squad that much, or the MPs in general. But they meant that the Africans had to be persecuted. Not they. King Fritz meant that the Africans had to be persecuted. But he wanted to live on his paradise. And then he gave his family this special cave where they could hide from the Titans. Now, see, that's where his entire thing falls apart. Because if he really felt bad about what the Eldians did, which I'm sure was atrocious. Like, look at any person who's coming to any sort of power. From the Assyrians and Babylonians all the way down to the United States, you can see it's a constant pattern. You come into incredible power, you're going to do some really awful stuff, right? So there's no doubt in my mind the Eldians did what the Eldians were accused of doing. Maybe some of it exaggerated, but again, I'm fairly certain that they did most of what they said they were doing. And again, these people ruled an entire continent. Plus they ruled some of Europe too. If you look at the map, they actually do rule some of Europe. So they ruled again the entirety of Africa, plus some of Europe. So these people definitely did some shady crap. They weren't all shaking hands and making deals when they got that territory, I'll tell you what. But anyway, So he makes this special crystal cave. He's like, "Oh, I don't want my paradise being ruined." He says that in season 3, and then he's in season 4. Thea's like, "Oh, they're like, don't let Grisha ruin our paradise." And again, this is perfectly encapsulated when Grisha goes. Again, I say this all the time. You're going to hear me say this a lot, but he goes to the royal family. He's like, "Please, my daughter, my son are there, my wife is there. They are going to die," and she's like, "Suck it up, man." She's like, "Hey, this is our punishment for doing, but I'm going to stay in this cave. I'm going to stay in this cave, being sick." Again, if these monsters, these sycophantic freaks, mostly referring to King Fritz, because again, she was brainwashed. But which again, the whole vow to renounce war was also another. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about Thea, Frida. She tells him, "No, we're not going to save you. You and your wife and your son deserve to die, and your daughter. They deserve to die because of what we did in the past." Again, for everyone who's outside that situation, we can see how utterly ridiculous it is. They did nothing wrong whatsoever. They did nothing deserving of such a harsh penalty, but they got it anyway. And again, he says this as, and Isayama draws a Titan eating a little girl, or maybe it's mom, I forget, but it's eating a woman. And it's like, "Yeah, I won't do anything. This is what we deserve." But he wants his own paradise. And he puts himself in the center of the walls and he creates a special cave for himself. And then he has this ridiculous vow to renounce war. Which again, I like peace. I like peace. And I want to go around instigating conflicts for no reason. But this vow to renounce war nonsense was ridiculous. It's choose one, right? It's either, okay, we're gonna be peaceful, make a deal with the Marlians, or fight for your freedom. It's not, I am going to protect myself and my family. At the same time, everyone has to bear the sins of their fathers, except for me, the actual king, who's actually the direct descendant of the person who actually did the crimes in the first place. Well, you know the deal. I'm in the basement and I have to go turn off the light. Hold on a second. Say time for 28 minutes.
28 minutes. Counting down.
Don't worry, my next video is going to be in the other basement, so we'll be fine. Anyway, so back on subject. So this completely screws everybody, and it's my main problem is not consistent. If he would have said, "Listen, we're bad people. We did a whole bunch of bad stuff. I want us to pay for it. I want us to make this right." And in this warped sense of justice that I have, you can kill every one of the aliens, starting with me. I'll offer my head first. You can kill my family first. You can have everyone you want on the island, or I'll flee to the island. I'm not gonna protect myself. You can come if you want to. I'm here. I'm gonna live out in peace, right out in the open. And if you want to come kill everybody, that's completely fine. I would have not liked that, and it would have looked utterly ridiculous from an outsider's perspective. But I would have been like, okay, that's fine. It makes sense. So those are reasonable actions. And they are reasonable because, again, he's in the direct descendant of the person who not only was with Ymir Fritz and did whatever trauma happened to Ymir Fritz, he did unleash a whole bunch of suffering. So I can understand where the guilt is coming from. And I can, bring up social examples in our current political climate, but I don't want to get political at all. But just to say, it's understandable the guilt he's feeling, and it's understandable he would take such a drastic measure like that. But he didn't do that. He didn't. He made sure he was safe, and he wanted to live in his own little paradise, and he wanted everyone else to die. They were like, everyone in the royal family was like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of the Titans. No one's gonna be hurt by Titans anymore. And then they got their word, God's pronounced word, like, yeah, that's fine. You can come kill everybody, which again is fine. They can have an ideology that allows all the aliens to get slaughtered. That's fine. Just don't spare yourself. Don't spare yourself. Don't say, oh, but we're going to be fine. We're going to go underground in some crystalline cave and all be huddled up together. No, you be the first to go. You be the first to go. You do that. Don't put that on the aliens who have little to nothing to do with this when you have the most responsibility, being the king and being in the direct line of the person who started this crap to begin with. So, yeah, he completely screwed. Had a King Fritz had chosen one option over the other, I think there's three options. There was surrender completely and let yourself, let all the aliens be killed on the Marlians' path. There was fight for their freedom, or those broker a peace deal, right? Had any of those three options been made, the story had been completely different. And again, we have time, so I'm actually going to go into each the three. But he took the worst part of each three options and then combined it, and then gave everyone the giant middle finger. Now, I'll start with the first option, which is the preferable option, which is the option that Aaron would like, and it's the option to fight for Eldia's freedom. There's a great Titan war. Well, we should have been on top of our stuff. We should have been constantly innovating and improving our military technology, not letting the Marlians get ahead of us. Let's go to war. Let's beat these Marlians. And again, option one requires them to beat the Marlians, and I'll tell you why later. So they beat the Marlians, and boom, they beat the Marlians, and now they're back on the continent. That means that Aaron is not born inside the walls. And that means he probably doesn't have the attack time. Maybe he does have the attack time, but he's not born on the walls. He's completely free. He's totally fine. His mother does not get eaten at all. And, then the story kind of played like that, right? And again, it's impossible to predict what would have happened. But yeah, so there's that. Second option is broker peace deal / them losing the war. They fight for their freedom, they lose, and they go with a peace deal with the Marlians, right? Or they say, okay, we're gonna start a war. You know what? I understand we wronged you. What do you want? Oh, you want this land back? You want this money? Okay, fine. We'll give you this and we'll leave you alone, right? Or maybe we'll demilitarize or whatever. And again, this would have made it so again that Aaron did not go inside the walls. Aaron's mom did not die. Aaron's mom would not die, and it would have been completely fine, and there would have been probably general goodwill between the two nations, because they would have probably gotten what they wanted and they would have gotten what they wanted. And again, if he brokered this deal with the best situation for the aliens in mind, things would have turned out well. Now, the third option, which would be the worst option, but it's still a reasonable option, would be surrender completely and say, listen, yep, this is me taking off the crown. Yep, we completely effed up. We completely destroyed you guys. You can have everyone here. You want slaves? We have people over here. You want women? We have women over here. You can have me as your prisoner. You can do whatever you want. You can make an example of me. That's completely fine. You can have the island. You can have everything, right? Or he takes the people and he flees to the island and he leaves it completely undefended, which he should have done. Or maybe he did put up defenses. And again, that's the other thing. Why do you have to make an offensive defensive weapon? Why can't you just make a wall and say there's a wall here? Why do you have to make it such a potent threat? Like, I'm gonna kill everybody in the world if you guys come on my island. He could just in the third scenario, he could just put up a wall and they could have just gone through the wall, not gone through the wall. Anyway, but let's say he puts up a wall, or maybe he doesn't put up a wall. Island gets invaded. He's the first one out there. He gets killed in battle first. He leads them in battle. He gets killed in battle. Everyone else gets killed. Grisha says, why let my son and my wife and son live, and my daughter let them live? He's like, no, we have to pay for our sins. And then he dies, and then Grisha dies, and then Aaron dies, and whatever. So on and so forth. Or maybe, again, he probably gets the attack titan, and things go pretty much as planned. Only, again, their memories, they have context why this is happening in the first place, and they understand why it's happening. But yeah, he just completely screwed him over by having the memories taken away and having the wall being such a potent weapon. Now the con of having each of these became a con of them winning would actually be nothing, right? The only thing the con would be to kill Marlians or to kill Marlian civilians. I think that would be the con, right? which the reason why I say that King Fritz's con that he took the con of everything, including the first one, is because Eren was put in a situation where he had to kill innocent civilians or kill Marleyans in the first place. So him avoiding fighting for Marleyan's freedom only guaranteed that someone's going to have more zeal and lust to fight for their freedom later on. It was inevitable. You're not going to treat people like that and not expect them to fight for their freedom. It's impossible. It's human nature. They're going to fight for their freedom. It's going to be violent and bloody because it's been pent up over a long period of time. So had he fought for his freedom while he was still free without that powerful rage and passion, things would have been a little bit different. But they weren't. So anyway, second deal, obviously they broker a deal. They're gonna have to compromises are going to have to be made on both sides. And they would have ceded land, maybe they would have ceded money, maybe this, maybe that. And again, the ideal situation would have not been achieved, and that would have been taken away from them. Because all the land was taken from them, and they're left with a portion of an island. Whoop to do. And they got persecuted. Because again, in the first two deals, especially the first one, they wouldn't have been persecuted, but they were persecuted. What are you gonna do about it? And on the third deal, the Khan, of course, the Eldians are persecuted. The Eldians are completely left defenseless and in fear of an impending invasion that they cannot and will not stop. They're behind the walls. Maybe they're not behind the walls. Eren's mom does get eaten. Blah 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 blah. And but the pro, the pro is that there's not a major war between the Eldons and the Marleyans, which means less deaths, and that there's a good chance that the Titans would have been wiped out, although they probably would have tried to keep them to use as weapons, right? But no. And again, they pro is that they know what's happening and know why it's happening. The con of all three of those is that, again, to recap, the con is what was the first one? Victory. They had to fight for the freedom regardless and kill Marleyans. They lost a bunch of land and they were persecuted. They were left open persecution. And the third one, which is the con of losing everything, is what happens. And they got none of the pros. They got literally nothing. Nothing positive for the Eldians was achieved. The only positive you could say was that there was a global world stability because they all hated the Eldians, which is complete bogus compared to the cost. Because again, having a superpower that controls an entire continent is pretty good for world peace and stability. Trust me. But hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles. So they got no pros whatsoever. The world barely got a pro, and the Eldians got nothing. They were completely screwed. They were left to rot and die, while the leader, who had this idea in the first place, sat smoking cigars, whatever the hell he did. This would be the equivalent of, let's say you're playing a game of football, but you pick up football, and you foul, right? Or and you foul somebody, right? It's a holding call, and of course the entire team has to go back 10 yards because you held. That's the rules of football. But then the offensive lineman who held decided, you know what? You guys can go back. I'll just stay here. Everyone would look at him and be like, "What are you doing?" No one considered him noble. I want to really destroy this illusion that King Fritz is somehow a noble man. He wasn't. He was an incredibly selfish person who caused a whole host of unnecessary human suffering. So yeah, that is why I have him not only as an antagonist, because again, Eren is striving against him the entire time, because he's the one who made him forget the memories. He's the one who made the walls. He's the one who threatened everybody. He's the one who left himself so open to be captured, which is why Reiner Barret's and Annie felt it was cool to just burst in there and grab it. On the contrary, if he would have been fighting for their freedom or even taking a peaceful stance, then I'm not going to hurt you guys unless you come after me. And they would not have felt so comfortable walking in there and just bursting the walls, and they probably would have been in the island in the first place. But before we get to the third one, which is probably the biggest villain besides King Fritz, 145. If it's even possible, I actually still think that King Fritz was the worst person because he acted so abnormally. See, King Tiamir and the other people and the first king, the other people mean the third group, they all acted normally, like normal human beings. This guy did not act like a normal human being. Name one historical figure, or maybe, that's actually bad to say. Name three historical figures who acted in this way. Name three, because this is absurd the way he acted. Absolutely absurd. First off, the notion that the Eldians, again, the giant elephant in the room is that the Eldians do not have to pay for the sins of their fathers that they did not commit. That's the giant elephant in the room that we're not even talking about. But besides even all that, every decision he makes, even after that egregious lapse in judgment, is a total disaster for every single person involved. Not just the Eldians, but the Marlians, because they're in constant fear of being destroyed by the Eldians because they were told, we have no idea why you're even still walking in the first place. Okay, but before we move to the third one, I've been shooting for 40 minutes and I am getting incredibly thirsty. So I'm going to get a soda. I don't know, entertain yourself or whatever. Set time for 30 minutes.
There's already a 28-minute timer.
Set time for 28 minutes.
Uh-oh, there's a problem. Please try again.
Goodness. All right, see ya. All right. I'm gonna put this here so if any spills happen, that absorbs it instead of the computer. Okay. So before we move to the third one, again, I've been shooting for pretty much 45 minutes, and I just want to explain why, again, the famous scene on the thumbnail when Erwin says who the real enemy is, why it's not actually Annie or Berthold or Ymir or even the Marlians. Okay? Number one, it's not the Titans. When he asks who the real enemy is in season 1, again, this is the brilliance of season 1, but when he asks who the real enemies are in season 1, we're all thinking, oh, it's the Titans. And again, the Titans were actually not the enemy. They were simply pawns in someone's game. In order to find out who the enemy is, to find out who is the chess player and why they're doing what they're doing. So it's not the Titans. That's ridiculous. It's also not the Warriors because, again, they're being manipulated by someone else, and they're just trying to save their families, which is a noble pursuit. Again, I think Reiner had less noble intentions. He was looking for personal glory. But again, his actions are still reasonable considering the circumstances he was under and what was going on with him. Seeking personal glory was usually a very selfish thing to do. It was incredibly reasonable and tragic and sad in Reiner's case. So he's really not the villain. He's not the real enemy. The real enemy, it really isn't even Ymir, because Ymir is sort of also when that he is being manipulated by someone, and it is definitely the 145th king. He's absolutely the enemy. I already think I explained why he's the enemy, but just as a quick recap, had King Frithha chosen any option besides what he had chosen, the Eldians would have had more context of what was happening to them, and would be able to fight back, especially if the Valis were announced war wasn't around. The Merlins would be so scared of the Eldians, or the Eldians would have had their lane entirely. Now let's move on to the third group of villains, which is probably the most potent, most powerful, most evil group of people, which would be the heads of state. Yes, the heads of state. Why am I saying the heads of state? I'm not talking about the Eldian ones, although I sort of am. I'm not referring to 145. I'm more referring to the Marley heads of state. Because, see, the Marley heads of state really have no reason for going after the Eldians, except they are power hungry. It is made abundantly clear that the Marley government is not fighting as some sort of noble quest for vengeance or survival or familial protection, like the Warriors are. They are manipulating children to go kill people, including children, because they want oil. Oh, God. Because they want oil to fund their war machine, because the Titans were becoming irrelevant in warfare. And so they needed conventional warfare to win to maintain their empire. And they had, of course, when you want to fund a conventional war machine, the first thing you're going to need, besides money and men, is oil. And of course, Parody has oil. So they did. Again, the Marley government, I'm talking the top brass now, we're not going to go after a Parody had they not had oil. Had Parody not had oil, they would have not gone after them. The public, the Marley public, would have wanted the Marley government to go after them. Oil or no oil, because again, they thought that they were under a serious threat, and they wanted the founder to be captured, the equivalent of capturing a part of the Strata Fortress, to is it Strata Fortress or Strata Fortress? To keep the security of their state, because their state was in serious trouble. The entire family was embarking on a noble pursuit, securing their family's safety for generations to come. So they were in the clear. The Marleyan citizens, as I said, were also in the clear because they did not know. They simply didn't know. They were threatened by someone who had immense and incredible power. But the Marley government was generations removed. Again, they were generations removed. This happened. The walls were created 100 years ago. That means that anything that happened is incredibly unlikely to have affected them on a personal level 100 years later, because they would have all been dead, and they would have simply grown up in a life of privilege and power and wanting more power. Again, it is made abundantly clear in the narrative that they just want more power. No one ever says, those damn Eldians, they killed my cousin. I'm gonna get at those Eldians. No, they're not. And the Marley citizens, again, I give a break for, because they were propagandized by the government. And this video is gonna have to get political for a second. And again, as a person who dwells in the United States of America, again, love my country, greatest country in the world, love the place. I just want to have that quick disclaimer. Heavily propagandizes her citizens a lot. I'm not going to talk about a certain scenario, because I don't want the video to get demonetized, although it probably already is demonetized, and I don't want to get people angry or turned off or closed-minded. I just want to keep this about Attack on Titan. But our populace is heavily propagandized. And another on multiple fronts. So, and I give a lot of grace to people who I perceive are doing evil actions because of the propaganda that they're enduring. So again, I do this in real life and in the book. I don't, the Marlene's actions are evil. Again, the thing that keeps coming to mind is when Grisha got the water dumped on him. Even though those actions were evil, they were still sort of a little bit reasonable. Again, as said later on by some generals, they did have hate that was unjustified. And they knew it was unjustified, but they want their hate. The hate kept them safe. They said. At the same time, does stand reason they were heavily propagandized. And again, living in this culture, and I see things that are abhorrently evil that I give a lot of grace to people. I don't think of them as evil people because they support these things. I look at the people who are pushing the propaganda and know what they're doing as evil people. Again, I'm not going to give an example, or maybe we'll give a fake example. Let's say that let's say that trees are sentient and they're just like us, right? Just like us, they have lungs, brain, consciousness. And let's say that everyone's like, oh, it's perfectly fine to cut down trees. That's totally fine to cut down trees, right? But the government news, not and the lumberjacks knew we were killing people who are like us, sentient beings like us. I would say that the people who are propagandized are, even though the information will be out there, even though the information is out there that trees are sentient beings, I would still say those people are not evil, and they're not bad, and they shouldn't be judged at all, or especially like the people who know, right? And again, they do two people, the person when Eren is coming over to destroy the global allied fleet, they said they were going to let go of their hatred and that it was unjustified, and then after the things are gone, he said that they held onto their hatred because they kept it. No, actually, maybe I'm confusing the same speech. But anyway, they admit that their hatred is unjustified and whatnot, and they have to be good. They have to be good to their children. Again, that was a really good scene. But again, while that is true that they didn't know what they're doing was wrong, a lot of it was also mixed in with that propaganda. So I do give the Marlins a little bit of a break. And they're not really the real enemy. The real enemy is Heads of State because they had no reason to be angry at the Eldians whatsoever. The Eldians truly were Marley's victims. Again, everyone's a victim in this story except for the Heads of State. That's why I say them for last, because at the end of the day, as much as I hate the guy, King Fritz still was a victim. And he was a victim of his own guilt, which is fabricated. It is still very reasonable that he should feel away. And again, I'm pretty sure all of us have had self-fabricated negative outcomes, and we get ourselves breaks for that all the time. So, again, Ymir's situation is also self-fabricated. She had no reason to continue serving the king, which he still did in the first place. But at the end of the day, these Marleans, Heads of State, they knew what they were doing was evil. They knew they had no reason to do it. They had absolutely no reason to do it. Their homes were not threatened. Their safety was not threatened. Their families were not threatened. They were even seeking vengeance for any deaths that happened in their family, or any tragedy that happened in their family, or to their loved ones, or to their friends. They were simply thirsting for power, and they want to fund their war machine. So that is why they are the absolute worst. They're the actual villains. But here's the crazy part. They could be anybody. They could be anybody. Once again, you've heard it saying over and over again, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Eren was a privileged life and a seat away, and I mean a seat like a political seat, from being the same person. And maybe his morals would restrain him from otherwise. Maybe his morals would have, but again, that's the beauty of it, because we know that the Eldian heads of state and the Marley heads of state both did the same thing. They both terrorized and killed people simply for power's sake. They were not victims at all. They were not. They did not. They were only victims of their own blood and power lust. That's it. They were not victims of guilt, which is sort of justified. They're not victims of misplaced or unguarded love. They were not victims of propaganda mixed in with fear and hate. They were simply victims of their own hate, bloodlust, and power lust. That is it. All evil, evil things. They have no room. They have no wiggle room. They have nothing. They are evil, sick people. Basically, I'm sure to make sure the cycle of violence happens 3 times. The third time being, of course, when the boy goes to see the tree. I consider it the third time. It happens twice, right? The Eldons are the bad guys who do this. Then the Marleyans are the guys who do this. Thus showing no one is special. No one's above everybody else. So when Erwin leans over and says who the real enemy is, no, it's not. No with the K. No, it's not the Titans. No, it's not Annie. No, it's not the Warriors. No, that it is the heads of state. Same thing. Oh, I had a great example. Oh, same thing in Stohess. Right? Let's use Stohess as an example. Same thing when Annie destroyed Stohess. She wasn't really responsible for those deaths because she had a great reason for killing those people. And she didn't even want to kill those people in the first place. It is shown that she's taking great care not to hurt anybody. But she's a great reason for killing them. They were using her father as leverage. She should be able to go home and see her father. That is her. That's her right, and that's something that girls need to have. Well, everyone needs to, but she's a girl. Someone say a girl. Girls need to have. They need to have a father, and she took actions that were destructive, but they were still sort of justifiable, and of course they were exceptionally and exceedingly reasonable. But the heads of state had no reason to do that. The only reason they did that is because they were thirsty for power, and they hated the Eldians. So again, that's what separates them from Gabby, right? Gabby was a hateful person who wanted to exterminate all the Eldians. But you know the difference was? She wasn't motivated by that. She was motivated by a false reality that was propaganda. They had the actual reality. They knew what was going on, and they did it anyway. Once Gabby figured out what the actual reality was, she dropped it. So anyway, I hope this video was informative. I hope it helps everybody see who really is the real enemy, who is the bad guy, and what to think when next time you see that meme, or if you're rewatching it with your friends or something, and you see that scene. Now you know what to think. As always, this has been Beluga the Jaegerist. Please leave a comment if you have any questions or comments in general. Both negative and positive are welcome. Anyway, have a good day, everybody.